All right. So we got that. What are the elections that are no political parties? What are they called? Yeah, nonpartisan. Nonpartisan. I should add, just literally, I think I told you that, so in the legislature, there were actually a group of Republicans who wanted to get rid of the nonpartisan. They literally just tabled that. Or the bill, maybe not died, but partially died yesterday afternoon. So they're probably going to keep the nonpartisan elections. Doesn't mean it won't come back. Because you know anything about the way the legislature works, first off, your mind will explode. Secondly, things happen and then you think a bill is dead and it comes back and things like that. And we got the progressives. They were, what was their view on monopolies? Antitrust. And how did they want to control businesses, to make sure that they would, worker or product safety, quality, that sort of thing. What do they want to do? Government regulation. And we talk about voting. Oh, what was it called? This idea that property and your own personal profit is not going to be above community. You can't do whatever you want to make money. Which I'm really opposed to. Who's with me? I own a little lot in Helena. My wife and I own this house, and I want to turn it into a toxic waste dump. I should be able to do whatever I want. Who agrees? Just come in and just dump all the toxic waste I can, and then set it on fire. No, I'll get from other people. Don't pay me to burn it on my property. Oh, sure, my neighbors won't mind, but the problem is, who do I know? Oh, I've been around. Thank you. So with that, so we have this Australian ballot. Let's get to the next one. Do we get the referendum?
Yeah.
Did we get
recall?
Oh, we got the recall. Yay, recall. Gray Davis was removed and replaced by Arnold Schwarzenegger. It is interesting watching Arnold Schwarzenegger. I saw him again, and he was a steroid-addled, massive human being, and he's just shrinking. He's now 4'1". Really? 70 pounds. But actually, it's just nose because he's getting smaller.
Cut in half.
Yeah. Life is tough. Did we get to direct primaries? Okay, this is the last one, direct primaries. So instead of having, they always call them smoke-filled rooms, and that's what they call them because remember back then everybody's smoking. But the party conventions choose who will be nominated by each party to run for office. They'll let the voters from each party. So Republicans will vote for people wanting to run for governor, and whoever wins that Republican vote in the general election will be the Republican nominee, and vice versa for the Democrat. So before it was done by state conventions and national conventions. And virtually every state would eventually do this in some way. Some do something called a caucus, where you literally have to go and you have to go to one common location and they vote that way. It's kind of a complex way to do it. Montana, it's a primary. And so even though the general election is in November, who will be able to vote in 2024? A few, most of you. So in the first Tuesday after the first Monday in June, the parties have their primary in Montana. And so you'll go, and so you'll get a ballot, either Democrat or Republican. Actually, you'll get both votes, and you just pick one, and you'll vote for who you want to run. There'll be like, for example, let's go right, President of the United States. Right, there's probably going to be, well, Donald Trump has announced he will run again. We'll be on the ballot. Nikki Haley, the former governor of South Carolina, literally just announced yesterday she's running for that nomination. Some guy, I have no idea, but he'll win. Just some guy is running, and there are probably 4 or 5 others. You'll pick one of those if you're a Republican, and then that's you're voting for them to be the Republican nominee in November. For the Democrats to be vice versa. Yes, sir.
How many times can you run for president?
So you don't want to run anymore. It's really hard each time you run. Now they would pass the 27th Amendment, or 26th Amendment, that would say limit the president to 2 terms. But that, and that would be in the 1950s. So once you have your 2 terms, if you're running, you can't run it. And Montana's a little bit different. They have term limits, but let's say you run for governor and you get elected for 2 terms, you can wait 8 years and run again. President, no, 2 terms, you're done. But if you lose, you can keep running as many times as you want. Now, you'll be known as, the guy who loses all the time. And I don't think, I'm sorry about that.
So let's say, we are saying that it's we were saying the primaries.
No, it's, let's put it this way, it's really hard to lose and then come back to it. So he's got it's gonna be a very daunting task. But he clearly is party leader for the Republicans. The Republican Party is the party of Trump. And so I think it'd be really hard for any other candidate to win. But he might not win a sweeping victory. That might be pretty contested. But that's, he's the leader of the party.
So can you like go through your 2 terms as president and then run for states?
Sure, yeah, any other office you want, or governor or. Office, yeah. Some cities you run for, that's actually an elected position in New York City. Not dog catcher, but that used to be animal control, yeah. And so no longer convention. So Montana went to a primary in most races, occasionally a caucus, but it'd be that. Now, for president of the United States, convention still chose the president all the way up till 1968 for the Democrats, 1972 for the Republicans. But now the conventions are just basically kind of a big pep rally for the parties. The candidates, the nominees have already been chosen. Before the conventions were these raucous occasions where they really chose the nominees. Now it's just, it's already done deal. Let's go have a pep assembly for who's running. They're for the most part pretty meaningless. It's already been decided. And so with that, so all of these were meant, we thought, one thing I didn't put down there, but they thought this would get more democracy, more people involved. They really thought more people would get into it. Yay, we're all running. And so what was the result? The result of the local progressive reform, social gospel, all of this was, well, first off, interstate commerce, remember only the federal government, that really stifled many of the state reforms. There could be state reforms, but they're hamstrung by any business that crosses state lines. And as you know, you probably can guess, virtually everything crosses state lines. And so it really does hamper this, yes. And not what?
Political ideas.
That they say, ask your question again.
I thought interstate commerce only applied to trade, even in name.
Yeah, it's anything that deals with anything that crosses state lines. So any business dealing, anything where there is money exchanged is commerce.
Okay, how does this apply?
So you can only pass, Congress can only pass laws that affect any trade that passes state lines. And so virtually any, so for example, you go to the grocery store, 99% of the things you buy there are not made in the state of Montana. Therefore, that's interstate commerce.
Okay, and I understand what interstate is.
So Congress can pass a law regulating anything that crosses state lines. So like food, Congress can regulate in the process state lines. So like food safety.
No,
Yeah, so they have that power to pass laws about anything dealing with that. Or for that matter, healthcare. Most healthcare, because it's cross state lines, they can regulate it. Well, we're talking about, you're talking about voting. Yeah, voting's not interstate commerce. So with that, voting numbers began to go down. And this actually really shocked the progressives. They thought more people would come out to vote. They really thought this. Oh, they'll all come out to vote, they'll have more democracy, they'll have more control. They're all going to come out to vote. They really believed that. It was the exact opposite. And voting numbers are going to go down in virtually every election up to the 1990s. They begin to go up, not like a big increase, but a small little increase here and there, couple elections. It's higher now than it was, for example, when I was your age, but it's still really low. You know, United States is really lucky if they get 60% of the population vote in a general election of the eligible voters. Really lucky. In a midterm election, it's like 30%. And, you know, this is what decides, you know, value of money, laws, all these things. Why? Because the parties were weakened. The progressives wanted to limit the power of the parties, and they did. And without the parties, that took away many of the things, or the reasons why people voted. Parties were social functions. They got people together. Parties educated people. They got out the vote. Parties told you, now, of course, they're biased, and we should understand that. But the parties told people how to vote. They would go out door to door and say we should vote. If the parties are weakened, they lose that. They lose that connection with voters, and voters do not feel connected. Parties educate. You know, that's that whole idea is, you know, you're going to vote for a Republican because we stand for this, or a Democrat, we stand for this. I should add one problem the United States is always going to have. It will have weak parties because we're winner take all. There's only two. And because the population is so broad, the parties have to be really broad, and therefore they can take no strong states. Because of it has to be so broad. And the Democratic Party is generally a bigger party. And so that means they have to be even more broad. So the Democratic Party is usually weaker than the Republican Party. But they're both really weak. Parties are really weak in the United States, embarrassingly weak compared to other countries. And what else do the parties do? The parties give you an ID. They give an ID of the candidate. And the strong political system, if they say, you know, I'm a Democrat, or let's say we're in Germany, you say, I'm a social Democrat, or I'm a Christian Democrat, or I'm a Green. You know what they stand for. Oh yeah, weak parties, you're not really sure. And there's something else. So let's say we're back in another country, strong parties, like we're in Germany, and you're a member of the Green Party. We're not going to go into the details of German politics, but you go against, let's say you're elected to the Reichstag in Germany, the Bundestag, and you're elected to their parliament. And you don't do what the Green Party wants, that party is strong, and they'll kick out the party. They'll find somebody else. Weak parties, you're free agents. You're free agents. And that's what would begin to happen. You really start seeing it in the 1920s, and it is endemic today. Parties, candidates become free agents. Parties have no real control. And remember the problem of economies of scale. You as an individual voter don't have much power. If you're together with a bunch of like-minded people, you can discipline them. But if everyone's just a free agent, what do you do? Hey, cut it out. And so candidates will run on other things than the issues that affect most people. All they need are votes. They don't really need to stand for anything. Remember I told you about the log cabin campaign? Remember that? And then money in 1896? Image became more important than anything. You just portray an image. You don't need. You just need to portray an image. Or you can hide what you really believe and just have an image of this. And here's the problem with image. If you're going to just do image politics, you're not out there saying, I'm doing these things for you. Look at me, I'm cool. How do you get the look at me, I'm cool out there? You need me. So money will become more important. Every time the parties get weaker, the money becomes more important. And this might shock you. Most people don't have a lot of extra money. Look at the candidates. So where do they got to go? Or it could be corporations, very wealthy individuals, or groups representing a lot of people, like some environmental groups or labor groups, but usually business has the most money. But we got to go to interest groups. They have a particular interest and they pool their money, like manufacturers, restaurants. Montana, the Tavern Association is really powerful. Wow, do they have influence on the legislature? I bet that's one most of you probably never even thought of it. Because you have liquor licenses, which are $2 million apiece, and they have a lot of power. So they put their money in the legislature. They get things done. And it's just so weird. None of you probably thought about getting a bill passed the Tavern Association. But like manufacturers have a lot of money. Wall Street banks have a lot of money. Just the United States has so many billionaires, just one billionaire can change everything. Bill Gates changed the entire education system of the United States on a whim. And then later on, we decided it didn't work. That's power. One person. Now, labor unions can do it, but and environmental groups. But environmental groups, they pick a particular interest. So you go to who has the money. And therefore, you're going to get this issue with parties are weakened. Nobody really knows what they're voting for. They feel they have no influence over the system. Candidates are just free agent. Everyone's just selling image and commercials and also therefore bad mouthing their opponent. Who matters in? They're only voting for the rich or the whatever special interests. Environmentalists, labor unions, but mostly it's wealthy. And what do voters do? Oh, what we have created then is a plutocracy. Those with God. They follow. And it's really interesting to me. So I just saw a political opinion poll done by Pew. Grain of salt on polls because they can't, there's some issues about statistical polling right now. But most people feel that politicians are only there for millions or for billions, regardless of party. But most people self-identify, not most, but there are more people that self-identify as independents than Republicans or Democrats in the United States. That's weak political parties. There's more Democrats than Republicans, but not by a lot. More people self-identify as independents. And then there's something like they think, I'm an independent, but what it means is, you want to talk about free agents, you're an independent. Talk about just a total free. And what happens is voter apathy. I vote. Doesn't affect me. Remember what I told you about monopolies? And one of the fear of the progressives were that monopolies were going to take over politics. Guess what happened? You would not believe the amount of money that just a few people put into elections that would turn for judges, for state legislature. You would not believe the amount of money. One oil guy by the name of Charles Cook has put in, he's put in something like $50 million in just Montana races in the last 12 years. In Montana races. And he's from Kansas. That's somebody who has a lot of money. He has a group called Americans for Prosperity. They just built a big economic swing in the ship. Yeah.
Is that like, well, the state,
Yeah.
states?
Wouldn't so Brian Zicke, who was elected to the first representative district of Montana, most of his money came out of state. He was elected as Republican from the Western District.
Isn't that? Being needed people outside.
Yeah, sure.
State.
There's no law. There's no law.
There's no laws. But I just like the point of all of incidents of different.
Partially because you just have a lot of extra money. He makes people because of all of it. But he's trying to set the situation up. His big goal is to get enough states that would turn to his way to have a constitution. That's his big goal. To get rid of things like social. It's gotta care about it. Public information, each is in some places. So that's what he wants. Now we could say that's good policy or bad policy, but that's his ultimate goal. Other people have other reasons. Could help, they might move in and do business. Delaware doesn't allow, for example, 70% of all corporations in the United States are incorporated in Delaware today. I know that seems weird. And Montana, like other states want to become like Delaware. So this is a big deal. So very quickly write down the national progressives and then let's get to let me do one election really quick. I know By the way, the test has got to be Friday. Don't get mad at me. Are you mad at me? Why don't you just do it tomorrow? Just my assumption is you'll know the stuff. Yeah, we'll talk because you're going to be gone. So, big thing is interstate commerce. The regulations have to be. That means Congress has got to pass laws. By the way, that's a good question, by the way. That's actually went to the Supreme Court. And it's big. It's a big deal. You know, I can tell you little bits to kind of set the stage. There's a lot of things going on. And so with that, interstate commerce, so it's got to be national. And that leads to that damn cowboy in the White House. Who was that? Roosevelt was kind of progressive. He didn't quite take that label yet. And for the first time in American history, well, the first time you could argue, yeah. In real American history, a president took the side of workers in a coal strike. So he was a fair arbiter or arbitrated a deal between owners and management. That is him kind of talking down to him right here. He also created a Department of Labor, the first Labor Day. It would be under Roosevelt, that day off. And he also, even though he didn't really push for anything quite yet, he called it the bully pulpit. Bully means kind of, think about bully as a combination of really boisterous for something and also bullying someone to do what you want. The president, when the president talks, everybody listens. And so a pulpit is something that a minister would behind and give a sermon. He could use the president's position to push for bills. All presidents had done it before, but with the new media that's happening, the president has great ability to do that. Because if the president says anything, it's news. So President Biden is going to give a speech about inflation, but also there's an issue about Social Security right now with some Republicans who want to cut it. And President Biden is going to give a speech today, and it will be on the national news and people will talk about it. The president just says stuff. You or I say things and most people probably won't listen. You kind of listen to me right now. I understand that, but that's the point. They have that authority. But in 1904, he is going to run as a progressive candidate, kind of. Hannah had died. Roosevelt got the nomination. The Democrats in disarray decided, well, we can't go with Bryan again. So they actually picked somebody who is economically more conservative. Better way to look at it is the exact opposite of the populist Bryan. They chose a lawyer for two different large railroads, Alton Parker. So they went the opposite way. And you might be thinking, well, everyone loves Alton Parker. Everyone talks about Alton Parker these days, right? All of you know Alton Parker, right? Nobody knew him then, just as nobody knew him now. Roosevelt, it was basically a sacrificial lamb and a disaster for the Democrats. They go back to Bryan in 1908. But Roosevelt had a program, and this is what we got to get to. It fits in with the jungle. He understood the value of the slogan. And people still remember Tippecanoe and Tyler too. That slogan, it's so great. Free labor, free soil, free labor, free soil, free speech, Vermont. But they remember slogans. And he came up with a slogan. I'll give you a square deal. I'll give you a square deal. He understood that most people work very hard. They might not follow politics completely, but they might remember the slogan. He's there for me. And other candidates would learn this in both parties. But most famously, his cousin, who would copy it almost completely, partially by accident. But what would he copy? What was Franklin Roosevelt's program? The New Deal. Harry Truman would follow that with the Fair Deal. Then they'd run out of deals. Dwight Eisenhower had dynamic conservatism. Slogan doesn't have to mean anything. John Kennedy had the New Frontier. Lyndon Johnson had the Great Society. Richard Nixon had the New Frontier. Ronald Reagan had Let's Make America Great Again. Yes, Donald Trump would completely copy that 100%. And some don't work. Biden's was really kind of silly. It was so silly, I don't want to talk about it. But it's just a slogan. You make America great's kind of like, we're not great now, so what do you, but you know, so let's go, and dynamic conservatism, and what's the square deal? All that matters is you remember it. You remember it. And so, yeah, President Obama's was hope and change. That's like, what exactly does that mean? You know, we could attack all of it. What was it? George Herbert Walker Bush's, or George W. Bush's was compassionate conservatism. Okay. They don't have to mean anything, but it's the populist program. And I'm just going to review. These are all the populist things. Remember, he wanted a progressive income tax, including a tax on very large estates. Social Security. Remember, that's an old age pension, which is never, no one ever thought about until the Industrial Revolution. Regulation. So like antitrust, consumer protection. By the way, I might have confused you a little bit. So when you're talking about regulation of consumer protection, it's quality. That's the term quality. Not like if the food is good or not. It's if the food will kill you. That's quality. So I might have confused you a little bit. I was using regulatory terms. Let me give you another one. These are all things we've talked about. 8-hour workday, child labor laws. These are all familiar. The populist, progressive. But he added one, the conservation of the environment. I'll have to explain that. And women's rights. Okay, women's rights was there. The big thing is voting rights. A pretty radical program. I should have virtually none of these would pass. But he got them out there again. The populists led to the progressives, and now they're there. Wilson would get a little bit of it. The 20s, most, it would be a kind of a retrenchment within the New Deal. And let me show you how he won. He won big. Once again, my passive aggressive anger at the blue-red state thing. The Republicans are blue here. I just don't like it, so I'm going to keep like purposely finding maps that are opposite of the blue-red thing. That'll show them. And look at this sweep for Roosevelt. Remember, there's no Republican Party here. There's just no Republican Party. And so with that, but one thing, business interests gave money. Rockefeller and Morgan gave a lot of money to Roosevelt, assuming that that square deal thing was just talk. We'll do what we want. It'll be laissez-faire. Don't worry. Yeah.
How long did this all sound?
Once it began to split apart in 1948 when Harry Truman came out for civil rights. And they split apart for the third party, but you could see the Republican Party, they called it the Southern Strategy. The Republican Party would go against civil rights to get us. And it was quite effective for the Republicans. Nixon, the term was formed very Goldberg, yeah.
That was fun. But now, like,
We'll get to it. Let's see. That'll be an exciting thing for you to wait for. I know you probably won't put to sleep at night thinking about it, but so. And that gets to, oh, we're stopping right there. All right, so let's kind of talk about the jungle. Because the jungle would come about in Roosevelt's second term. And the reason the jungle is so important, because the reason this is important, this is another example of the argument. Roosevelt talked about consumer protection and what he really meant to do. Oh, I should add business interests, almost forgot something. Business interests were like, we got Roosevelt. And Roosevelt made it very clear, I mean it. I'm going for the square deal. And they turned. Wow, did they turn against them? This is it for Roosevelt. Look. They would make sure he would not get the nomination when he would decide, I do want to run to get in 1912. Nope. And didn't get in 1912. They turned against Roosevelt so fast. When they realized he meant the square deal. He was not just talking. And so it kind of, they call them the old guard. So let's get to regulation. Why regulation? Why the jungle? Well, the jungle fit in this. The jungle fit in this because there were two basic ideas. That laissez-faire, which is the conservative ideal, which is the market. The market will decide. And so this is the way it was basically done. Sure, there might have been a few regulations. You saw one of the regulations. I have this where it had that was even stamped in, as checked in that second article I gave you. And there are a few bits of regulation, but what do they really mean? The market will decide this. And how it means is this: if companies put out good products, people will buy it. If companies put out bad products, people won't buy it. That's the market. I mean, if you put out food, you have a restaurant or a shop, or you're selling food, and people are getting sick from that, what's going to happen? Yeah, they won't go. And this probably has happened to you or someone you know. Anyone went to a restaurant and got sick, walking out, got food poisoning? Are you thinking, I want to go try it tomorrow? Maybe they cleaned up their act. You will be reluctant to go back. Yes.
Would that mean that monopolies are against the market because monopolies control us within the worth of their products go down because they control?
Yeah, because where else are you going to go? In fact, that's the argument. You've exactly summed up the argument of the progressives. Because in this one, there's got to be choice. Does that make sense? You got to have other places to go. It only functions if there's other places to go. Or let's say I'm running the only food shop and I'm putting out slop. The market has got to be such that you would look at it and go, oh, well, we can jump in and drive them out of business. So it's got to be free. And then if I put free to enter or free to go out. So everyone got it. That's the mark. We understand that. And that's very simple. It is simple. That's one of the great advantages of this. It's simple, isn't it? And you just, yeah, I won't go there if it's bad. And now it's time for a little bit of Latin. Because you guys have been sitting there. I know you know, we need more Latin, right? Who wants more Latin? Who's in Latin? One? I think Latin's really interesting. It's made up. Habeat emptor. Habeat emptor. What?
It's like vocabulary.
Yeah, it's Latin. But English is possibly. English columns. We should be teaching them. Yes, I've had many people ask me. And I never know what to say. Oh, why do we teach English? We should be learning American. Yeah, why not? Okay, we'll learn, Lakota. By the way, it's really cool, but hard for English. Yeah.
We should invent our own units of measurement. Again, two other nations in the world we have used the imperial system. I don't know what they are, but they're communists because they use our system. We should measure things in cheeseburgers and football wheels from now on.
Sounds good to me. But actually, when there was a movement for metric in the United States in the 1970s, a lot of people said that was a communist bloc. Not making that up. Caveat emptor means, okay, there's a lot of definitions of it, but what it means is buyer, in this context, beware. So it's your responsibility too. As a consumer, when you buy food, if you're not smart enough to check if that food is healthy for you, it's kind of your fault. It's your fault. And on the most basic element, you're sitting there watching someone cook, so you're cooking for them. Oh, I just noticed you've added fake meat, aka dirt, to that. But it tastes good. Oh, I would not buy it. You see a problem if you don't watch them prepare. Maybe if you get a can. Yes.
As I perceive, this is the rate fees and time you can sue for the fact that you felt both on the front and right that was made by regulations, no matter how many times you do with your poorly conceived definition what you want to.
That could be, now, even though you could potentially sue. I mean, there's no definite, but there's some limitations on lawsuits. Reading the council. So let's get to but it's buyer beware, you're responsible. Oh, what do you need here? The word is, you need transparency. You need transparency. You gotta go to see, right? It doesn't work if you don't know what's going in. And we all have that. When you go out and buy a phone, you go through and you research all the different components, you look at the chip, it's not a cheap component. We all know this, right? We all do that. You buy a car, you go through and make sure that the brake is exactly. All of us do this, correct? Did I just tell you a problem with this? And so what did the progressive say? We need some kind of regulation because 2 reasons. Seth mentioned it. First one, what if you have monopolies? You have no choice. You have no choice. So they put out slop and you say, how dare you? And you say, well, tomorrow might be cooked. What do you want from us? What do you want? The cable keeps going out. Get it someplace. What are you gonna do? Hospital monopolies are even more terrifying. What else then? Do you have transparency here? Think about 90% of the products we buy. Do you have transparency? Hey, if you ever like, here, it's having nuggets. They're basically, chicken hot dogs. They'll deep out. Because if you're not gonna make nugget, I got really bad news for you. Chickens don't come out. No. They don't come in that little shapes. Huh? Yeah, I always like the boot, yeah. The boot. Now, I've had McNuggets. I gotta be honest, I've not had a chicken McNugget since the last century. But they're probably fun. But I had a friend who bought a McNugget. This is when I was in college. I so vividly remember this. And he took a bite out of it, and there was something hard inside. Sure, it was a chicken leg, and I agree. I want it all ground up, right? So that should tell you one very important thing. Usually they're ground up. Do you see the point about that? No, clearly what happened is the line was moving too fast. They made a mistake. They did not mean to put legs. Yeah, it's a chicken. Hold it out. And of course, it'll be a chili. But I'll tell you one more story. I'll tell you about canned chili. But
It's ruining all.
no, I'm not ruining the food.
Yes, you are.
The point is, when it's prepared, you have no idea what's in there until you take a bite. Now think about the things you can't see. We could see a leg. He could crunch it. It was about this long and then the.
Oh, they was the chicken.
I can't remember what's shaking. But it was just in there, it was kind of flat.
Was it a food?
Huh?
Was it a leg and food?
Was it in the Glock? What they have in the jungle? It was for the buck. Walk, they wade through it in galoshes, yeah. Do you have transparency? No, you don't know. But we see this with cars, right? Do you really know what's in an app you buy? You have any idea? Yeah, you have no idea. Differences. And with that, let's go and take a look at this. He talked about examples of how this is happening. Everybody actually do examples of cutthroat competition. And my guess is you have a lot of them in here. I drew a picture of one right here. Isn't that a good picture? You feel like you're there? What is one that really caught you? So, who worked in the tank rooms of steam, and some of them were open vats near the level of the floor. Their peculiar trouble was that when they fell into the vats, they were fleshed out, or they were fished out, and there's nothing left to be worth exhibiting. The bones will go out to the world as Durham's pure leaf lard. That's in the bottom of the last page. So what is lard? Lard is rendered fat. And what they do is, so they have the meat hanging after they kill the animal, they skin it, there's fat pieces they can't use, and the offal. And you know what the offal is? What offal is? The guts. I mean, unpleasant, hard job, and they want to go really fast, so they make mistakes a lot. Because they're going as fast as they can go. And back then, they would take it and they just throw it on the ground. And now they throw it on conveyor belts. Like kind of meat, intestine, stomach, brain. Conveyor belts. When one conveyor belt goes on a chute, and this is stuff like this: fat, stomach, intestine, skin, and it goes into a big pile in the basement. There's no ventilation except for the steam to release. And they have these big, huge vats. That's a vat with some kind of heat source. And they superheat this to 400 or 500 degrees. I should add, it smells so bad when they render meat. If you ever rendered bone or meat, the smell is unreal. Gets in your skin, it absorbs in, it literally soaks, and you can never get rid of that smell. Ever. It's there for your life. You do that, work there for a couple of days, you'll never not smell this horrible smell of. Literally, it smells like it. So think about this, it's boiling, this cauldron. And you get this big mound of this stuff. And they would take brooms and they would go to the edge of this and just kind of push it in. Boiling cauldron of fat. And then when the fat gets to a certain level, they release it and there's kind of a mesh gate, and that catches bones and things like that, and it goes to the fertilizer. Everything else, back then they used to put borax in. Borax was a detergent, but we would make it white. It's lard's pink. You know, and well, let's get back to this. So think about the whole place being covered with a thin layer of steam filled with fat. So it begins to cool, and now everything's covered with a slick layer of fat. Can you imagine anything more slippery? Now, of course, you can make it safer, but that's expensive. One of the big things is this chimney will get clogged up with fat, and they had to have someone get a stick and kind of knock the fat down. Upton Sinclair witnessed this. I should add, this job, punishment. This is a punishment job. Workers who wanted to do what? Sorry. And can you imagine? They literally be hanging off like one little, basically a handhold, like a jungle gym, holding with a stick over 500-degree boiling fat. If you fall in, you're gone. In fact, you slip on the edge and your arm falls in, deep fat frog. Right. Then what? Then what? Are they going to throw all that out? No, just drain it. They put the borax in. Oh. Now, of course, they can make it safer, but that is a cost. And how would you ever know what was in that lard? You just get white fat. That was the argument for regulation. Is there another one? Yes. Yeah, and that's the point here. Or if they get blood, they cut themselves. Blood gets on it. That's actually the real problem for them. If you cut yourself, how would you ever know you have blood on it? How would you know? You're in a slaughterhouse. How would you know it's your blood and not the animal? How would you ever know? Now, of course, that rarely happens, but whenever you speed up the line to say pause, what's going to happen? Yeah, mistakes. People working their tails off. Think about that woman at the sausage mill for 7 hours. That's that one straight. Yeah. Huh?
The pickle room?
Oh, the pickle room. So instead of cooking the meat, they just dump it in a acid. And the acid would get into their skin and eat away the joints. So the fingers begin to spray, and let's be very clear, it's not like, oh, I got happy fingers, no. It hurts really bad. Why do they do that? It's its cost. The fertilizer room, they would ground up the bones, same deal, fertilizer stinks. The powder would get into their lung and fill up, have you ever heard of miner's lung? It fills up that way. Also, it gets into your eyes, and it'd say that your irises would lose their color. And it'd be nothing but two little beady little pupils. That was the worst punishment job. Why do they have it this way? Pots. Oh, and don't you love the potted chicken? And they never saw a chicken? What does cut up chicken look like? So couldn't it be brain? No, it's honestly, right? Doesn't mean it is. No, it's not the point. The point is, in these kind of foods, you don't know. Remember, the argument here is transparency. Maybe tomorrow I'll show you McNuggets. Do you want to see a McNugget?
No.
And then bring McNuggets and a can of chili. You want me to tell you my chili story? So once again, we're not talking about the point. Oh, and then I should also tell you how many bug parts they allow in peanut butter, which I should have. I love peanut butter. I use peanut butter almost every day.
I always use some extra protein.
The point is, it's a cost. The more bugs you take out, the bigger cost. Hey, it's plants. You're gonna get bugs on them. And now, thank you for that story. Ready for McNugget? Remind me, I'll show you McNuggets. I do have McNugget day.
Nothing to hold you guys in the
Oh, yeah, don't get me wrong, I know all, I know. Actually, if you ever see, if you ever see something that's artificial or natural flavor from natural coloring.
Did you watch that?
What's it? You never know.
Yeah, and like whenever like, cause I found out that like you can find maggots in peanut butter, like it's very common. And my dad would always go, it's extra protein. He's like, out there. That's.
And what are we saying?
Oh, there was an Arctic episode where like, the funny one finds out like what goes after. Yeah, I don't have, it's fine.
But the thing is, they're gonna get stuff, it's just how much stuff.
Yeah.
And on that happy note.
Mr. Partridge,
Get old!
on Teams I keep saying Friday for the test. Okay, perfect.
I really was hoping to, but everything takes long.
Me too, I was really hoping for tomorrow. We could do that. I think you can teach me a little.
I mean. I know I can just do it to grab the test and you have to know it. Now, the bad part about that is we can do it at the end of the year, there'll be stuff. But hopefully you have enough background, will be easier to learn. It really does, it gets easier the whole time. Big Friday, that's a long ways in, that's gotta be Friday. Oh, that's beautiful. Beautiful. Only a few mistakes. I would make, I understand completely. I have nothing but empathy there.
We talked about caveat,
Caveat.
caveat and for English the other day.
I heard about that. You guys are learning, so it's not English, you're learning Latin.
Yeah.
It's all a scam. Everything's a scam.
So did you the block?
It's Wednesday. These are your students, yeah.
So
all of a sudden it turned into private.
They have the wrong.
I think it should have been more clear.
That is so funny, like, I just think about that, as a funny shock.
Okay, but I don't understand the broader proposal. That's.
Whatever. The one that we were reaching.
Oh, okay. So basically.
I mean, a good one, but not like a 4.0.
Bring back the old days. Right, so I had to move the test to today, so clear your desk. I didn't want to do this bananas week. I want to test. She was like, I demand it. So those of you who should have a pen, get it to me.
What's my name on it?
Oh, you get the instructions. Very good. Thank you. Hold on, we're going to talk about here in a second. Couple notes and we'll talk about, by the way, look at this beautiful picture I just drew for the jungle. Isn't that amazing? Isn't this kind of unreal? I didn't trace this. Oh, I gotta shut off the camera. Everyone say goodbye. Say goodbye to YouTube. Say goodbye to that. There's been some guy watching my class in Saudi Arabia. Bye, guy from Saudi.